evening. My name's Sonash, and I'm a developer evangelist for a company called Twilio. Twilio, if you don't know, is a communications platform for your applications to communicate with your users via voice, video, or messaging using the tools, languages, or frameworks that you already know. I'm not really here to talk about Twilio. They might crop up in some examples later, but what I am here to talk to you about today is service workers. And I'm going to go with the quick introduction first. Service workers are very much a script that intercepts network requests, so web developers can treat the network as an enhancement and provide offline experiences for users of web applications. All make sense? We can go to the pub then. Fantastic. It's just down there. What's it actually called? What's the pub called? The Crown Tavern. Oh, wonderful place. I used to drink there when I worked at a previous company. Excellent. So we have a slightly longer introduction to service workers for those of you who are still here. I want to start with how kind of delighted I was the first time I saw a service worker and what it does and kind of how it works. You know, no idea why anybody called it XML HTTP request, given that it's not necessarily about XML, doesn't have to use HTTP, and never returns a request to you. It's still a pretty cool thing that we've managed to make quite a lot out in the like kind of interim 10 or so years, I guess, that we've had access to it, and we've made some amazing stuff on the web. And I think this next step change, the new thing we have for that is service workers. And I believe that in the future we will wonder how we coped without service workers, how we ever bothered making websites without these things. So I want to talk a little bit about the birth of the service worker. We've talked, like, at that brief introduction at the start, the service worker provides an offline experience for users. But we had this already a few years back with the application cache. It would look something like this. You start it with a cache manifest, you'd have some comments, you talk about caching certain URLs, and you loaded this as an attribute in the HTML element of your site, and boom, your site then worked offline. Fantastic. Everything was done. You could go home early, or off to the pub early if that was your preference, and everything was fine. Except, this is a really easy kind of declarative way of saying this stuff should be available offline and whenever I want it. But it turned out that when people tried to use it for real applications, they found otherwise. And it was Jake Archibald of Google who has famously declared the application cache a number of things in his time, but if you search for that phrase, you will get talks, articles on a list apart, all sorts of varying reasons why the application cache did not do the job it was supposed to do. I know I used the application cache one or two times perfectly reasonably, but then that was a single page application that didn't need to go anywhere or do much particularly difficult. So that was where it was difficult for applications to actually use. So, in early 2013, February 2013, the spec for the service worker was born. This is with Alex Russell on Alex Russell's GitHub, and contributed initially by Alex Russell and Jake Archibald in order to build up a much better way of making sites work offline. And you can use it today. It then dropped into browsers just over a year ago in Chrome 40 and Opera 27. Although I've been telling people 24 for a while because Can I Use tells me that, and that's not true as far as Opera tells me. So back in January 2015, these two browsers were released, and the service worker was unleashed onto the public. And then actually earlier this year, January this year, Firefox eventually caught up with version 44, and they're pretty happy about that. They got their service worker support out as well. So what does it really do? Like we saw that nice, easy application cache, which worked nicely for getting a simple site offline. What does the service worker do? It is a harder kind of JavaScript API, and here comes a little bit of code. First of all, you need to register a service worker. This is on your page, and you can check for the existence of the service worker object on the navigator if you're working with browsers that aren't these. And you register it, and you point at another bit of JavaScript. You can give it a scope, a path that the service worker works underneath, but the default is just to use the root, and that's kind of easy enough for demonstration. And then that returns a promise. Promise is another one of those nice things that have come along at the right time. such that, if things work, then we get a response in the then, and if things don't work, we have to catch that and do something about it. In this particular case, cry about it, I think. Yeah. And that's kind of what you need to do on the front end to register your first service worker. And then, as I said, that service worker intercepts network requests. It actually then works on behalf of any tab, any browser tab that has that site that registered to open. So it works for everyone, and you can listen to events like the fetch event. And that's so it's basically like a proxy that you control inside the application. It's kind of cool, right? Although you might get a little bit worried about that, because if somebody else were to load a service worker script for your page for a user, then suddenly you lose control of your entire website for that user. Terrifying. But don't worry, because you're actually not allowed to use service workers on sites that aren't secure. And so service workers will not work over anything less than HTTPS. So this is part of a whole other push to get the web onto more secure protocols. And this is certainly one of those things that you cannot use without HTTPS. Interestingly enough, I think geolocation just knocked into Chrome, as now has to be done via HTTPS as well, as do camera and microphone from the Get User Media API. None of that can be done on an insecure site anymore. You might be wondering how you test this, but don't worry, localhost is also known as a secure domain in this particular case, so it's okay to work when you have a server on your own laptop. So I kind of want to show you how this works, and this is where we see whether this microphone stand works for me as well. I was fiddling about with it before. It doesn't quite fit the microphone, but I'm just going to try. Good. Let's go have a look. I have, let's make that less weird. This is a website. It works. I'm actually going to be triggering offline here because by cancelling the server. And if I go back, it's dead. That's a shame. So let's fix that. We'll bring it back to life first, and then let's write the code for it. You can read this at all. This is the bottom of that page. It is the simple kind of cover template for Bootstrap. I thought it looked nice enough when we were... oops, there we go. I thought it looked nice enough. So I'm just going to... got a script down here, which I'm going to start work with. And this is where I'm going to use that service worker. And this is the kind of stuff we saw just in the slides there. And that's kind of all we need to do, although I can... let's get the call back just to make sure it did work. Great. That's how we register our service worker. Easy. This is the service worker file that I've got. And first of all, I'm actually going to listen to a different event. There's a few events in the life cycle of a service worker. And the first one is the install event, which gets called, funnily enough, when that service worker gets installed. And this is the point where we can kind of do some pre-caching and some work to set this site to work offline. So I'm going to use event wait until, and this is a new thing for events. Basically, the service worker itself can kind of get killed by the browser at any time because it runs in the background of the tab. But wait until, in the context of an event, will keep the service worker alive until the work that's done in that wait until is complete. And so in here, you pass you pass a promise. And so once that promise resolves, the event stops waiting and the service worker can be killed again. And in this case, we're actually going to open up a cache. And caches is just an API that you get from within the service worker. And we're going to open this one, which I'm going to call JS Monthly. You can call that whatever you like, and it's quite useful to be able to rotate through caches. Of course, these also return promises, so we can use that again, and we'll get the cache in that resolved promise. And then using that cache, we can add all our pages, all our things that we want to store offline. So in there, I'm going to put index.html. That's just the home page. That's maybe not exactly how you do it, but This is just an example. So we're going to have the index and the CSS, and that's all we should need. And that's saved them, and then we can listen to that fetch request, that fetch event, sorry. And in this case, we actually want to do something about it. We're just going to take this just wholly offline right now. In this case, we're going to event respond with. Because what we're going to do is, you can actually, the service workers come with a request and a response API, more kind of lower down primitives that talk about actual request and response. And you can create a response out of nothing if you want to, but it happens that we've put our responses in that cache right now. So again, event respond with either takes a promise or a response object, and hopefully that promise resolves to a response object. And what we're going to do is open up that cache again. We've got a JS monthly, and then you're allowed to shout out if I make typos. And when we get that cache, we are going to just return cache.match event.request. And that's pretty much it. So what we should be able to do now is refresh this page, and if we just take a look at the console, we have a yay there. So the service worker did install correctly, and then I'll get rid of that. I should just be able to kill the server, refresh the page, and find out that it still works. So that is me refreshing the page over and over, and that is now offline, and that is the kind of simplest application of a service worker. It's pretty cool, like all within kind of 18 lines on the service worker side, and that's me kind of making apparently kind of the pyramid of hell that everybody hates anyway, but it doesn't matter. That's quite simple, and we can build pretty much, we can build an awful lot of this on top of there. So let's head back over here. It worked. Cool. So why would you want to use a service worker? Why would you want to go offline? And this, for a lot of people, I think, and I think definitely for the browser vendors who have done a lot of fighting for the web in recent years, is very much the argument of web versus native. And this is particular on mobile, because everybody wants a mobile app these days. Nobody wants to use a mobile website. It's a real shame, because we have the ability to make excellent experiences on the mobile web. In fact, we have a whole bunch of interesting things, like we're online by default, which means you can get that application whenever you need on the web. You just visit a URL, it's fine. But native apps have that kind of offline by default. Like, they exist because they get downloaded, and from the start you can open a native app and it should work. Of course, some native apps actually break that and choose that they require a network connection in order to get things done, and that's always disappointing. But they have that ability to be offline by default. The web apps have that discoverability. That you Google for something, you search for something, you just type in a URL and you have the application that you wanted. Whereas native apps always have to go through that App Store installation, and that first usage is it's kind of a difficult one, really, especially if you've come from an app that you've maybe logged into, because once you download the app, you then have to re-log into everything. Remember that password, you've probably forgotten it, it's probably a really long one. Have to go through your email, I don't know. That first kind of native version is pretty bad. And why we have service workers is very much down to the fact that this online by default thing needs to go away. We need to be able to change that to be able to build websites that are offline first. The application cache promised this, but it was wrong. It couldn't do it. The service worker promises this and allows us to do that. And we can build applications offline first that will work using the network as an enhancement for users. So they get the benefit of both an application that works straight away when you hit a URL, and then works again if you're on the tube, if you're on a plane, if you are somewhere without data, or with spotty data, with terrible data. Jake Archibald, when he talks about this, likes to talk about Li-Fi, which is the idea that you're connected to some sort of Wi-Fi, and that looks like it's a connection, but the browser and you can't tell what's on the other end of that. In fact, I did see a talk in which he proved that your router could be plugged into a plant. And the website, the browser, the application, they all think you're online, but at the end of that cable there's a plant, and that's just, it's not going to work. So this is what we need it for. And even if you don't care for offline, I think there's a lot of other benefits available from the service worker. Performance is one of them. Like, we are actually in control of the cache. We are not fighting the browser for whatever kind of caching it's doing and fighting all other sites on the internet for the browser's cache. We have control of this cache, and we can keep things in it and get hold of stuff. I have a question. Go for it.
You mentioned the performance. Does it kind of keep a bytecode, or it's
assets? You can actually go and inspect the things that are in the service worker cache via DevTools. And I won't show that right now because I'm actually not that used to Chrome's DevTools, but they're in there, and you can find them under the service worker and workers. I'm not entirely sure exactly how it keeps it under the hood, but you can go and inspect them, so it's possible to get back at them. But then, of course, they're only ever the files that you as a user has seen anyway. And of course, that is sandboxed for any other applications. Like, there is no access to to that sandbox for any other web applications, anything outside of the scope that you gave that service worker in the first place.
Can the browser remove this sandbox?
Can the browser remove it?
I mean, is a kind of cache that the browser can remove, or is something that you control also?
The idea in this case is very much that you have the control over it. Yes, and it's not going to just remove it at will. I believe there is something about the browser itself will give up kind of 20% of available disk space to caches like this, and there is a potential that you can come and hit the actual limit of that at some point, but you will start to get errors in the service worker when it's trying to save stuff to the cache, and at that point, this should very much be an enhancement on an existing application anyway, because it's not going to work in two browsers. So if you should be able to work without the existence of this cache. It just responds with it in case. And so you can build stuff into this kind of you can build stuff into this response such that, if you don't match something in the cache, and I knew everything was going to match in this particular case, if you don't match something, you can go and make a fetch request that returns a response object, and you can return that. So the service worker then just acts as a middleman back out to the actual network, and everything's going to be fine. You can also, you can then use that to cache stuff that you fetched for the first time and get back to it again, and that increases performance all around. The service worker will have access to the IndexedDB that the site does, and so you can put stuff in from the page and read it out in the service worker, or the other way around. The early versions of service worker did not have a fully formed caches API. However, the polyfill then used IndexedDB to fill that in, so the things would actually be cached into IndexedDB. But the service worker cache itself these days is not IndexedDB. But as I say, they have access to each side of it. And IndexedDB becomes very useful if you're doing more complicated stuff with this. You can cache all requests, yes. It's any request made by your site, and that includes external requests, can be cached and can be looked after. There's some slightly difficult things with kind of the fetch API and cores, cross-origin stuff. And if you're not doing a cross-origin thing, then if you don't get a successful response, if you don't get a 200 or 201, then you just get a response that says 0 and doesn't give you any more information about what happened to it. You kind of, at that point, you drop it and go to the network and hope things work out. But you can, intercept all network requests made by your site. So you can communicate between the service worker and the site using post messages, the same as you communicate with any other kind of web worker. And similarly, there is also a lifecycle event that happens in the service worker called Activate, which is very good for managing your cache and taking things out of it that you've deemed to be over with if you've deployed the site and other stuff like that. But yeah, you can either communicate directly with it or as part of a new service worker update flow. Cool. I will carry on because there's a bit more to this talk. Fallbacks. Fallbacks are pretty useful on top of performance. Because if you're not going to go offline the whole way, then just having somebody sit and wait and watch a blank white screen whilst your thing loads is awful as well. So eventually, The Guardian tried this, and they've got a good blog post about it on their dev blog, that if you try and hit the Guardian, I think they're just testing it out on the dev blog, but then it works across the rest of the site if you load it up that way. But if you can't connect, if you're not online and reading The Guardian, they will offer you a crossword to do, which is kind of nice, whilst you wait to get access back again. But there's more than just this kind of caching and offline stuff. The service worker also gives you access to push notifications, something that we've never had on the web up until now, and something that native applications have definitely held over the top of us. And I have a quick demo of that. 1 second. Let's get out of there. So I actually have, I've been building this myself. That isn't as an offline site apparently. This is my kind of inbox. As I said, I work for Twilio, and this is based on a Twilio number. Just sucks down all the SMS messages sent to that Twilio number, and from my number in this case. And so what I can do is send it a message and hello. If I send it a message, then we should see a notification appear. That's rather good. I got another notification. We'll see that one later. We've got that, but what's kind of cool is, I'm going to close that. I've got some other examples here, but none of them, I don't have any of the Chrome tabs open. I can send another message, and I'm no longer on the website, but I will still receive the push notification, which is kind of cool. We were able to do those notifications when you were on the site before, but now we can do this kind of ability to do it when you're off the site. And that works particularly well on mobile, on Android, and on Chrome on Android, in which you can close the browser entirely down, close all applications, and a push notification will wake up the service worker, send a notification to you, and wake up the browser when you hit it. So that's kind of cool. And then we also have, so that didn't come in quite as quickly as service workers did, so it arrived in Chrome 42, which was 2 versions later, and they're still kind of working on it as it goes through updates to how you can send data along with those messages. Firefox released this in version 44. I do have to warn people at this point when we talk about push notifications that with great power comes great responsibility, and we shouldn't just be spamming our users with horrific kind of notifications about everything that they don't care about. Users need to be personable, actionable, and useful to a user, or they will turn them off and you will never see that user ever again. Another kind of cool thing, though, is background sync, and this just arrived in Chrome 49, and I have a quick demo of that as well. And this is Jake Archibald's offline Wikipedia kind of example, and if we go and hit multinational, I just got that one downloaded, and we can hit corporation, and it kind of it loads the thing in the background and then and does that. But what I'm going to do is just turn off my internet, which in this case is taking out my phone. I'm not on the Wi-Fi, as you can kind of see, that's just turned off. So if I hit legally a person, it's going to say, okay, I'm offline. But, I know you wanted that, so let's load it in the background. Cool, I'll get a notification when it's ready. I already accepted notifications from this site, so that's another good use of notifications, something I want to hear about. And so if I plug that back in, I should get back online, and the browser will then go, all right, that's cool. It's registered to sync, and there we go. We get that, we get the notification, and we have the article, and it's going to be there straight away as well, like instant load, pretty much. So that, I think, is an amazing use and very new use of service workers. And like I said, I think that's in Chrome 49, very new but very exciting, and something like I intend to add to that SMS-based application, such that if you send a message and you're offline, it's going to store that and wait to send it when it comes back online. And then people always talked about geofencing when they talked about service workers in the first place. But I've only heard, in fact, the talk has kind of died down. It's just been me going, oh, maybe, someday. So possibly not in terms of geofencing, but that would be kind of cool to wake the service worker up when you stumble into a particular radius of latitude and longitude. Maybe. And then finally, this all brings us on to a kind of an exciting thing that's being talked about a fair amount this year, which is progressive web apps. And progressive web apps are pretty much the addition of service worker and thus kind of being on a secure origin. Manifest file for a website, which allows you to kind of talk about what the app's called, set up some icons and splash screens and things like that for it, and such that with some user engagement, you get a downloadable web app, something that looks very much like an app from the App Store. And when I talk about user engagement here, I mean, it's not going to start asking to be downloaded as an app the first time somebody ever visits it. But if the browser deems that the person is interested in it and is coming back to this application, then it starts offering itself as a download. And so you get app install banners, and they look pretty cool. Like, this is an example I stole off of Adi Osmani's site. Like, if you've come to the site a few times, and that kind of criteria is changing amongst Chrome at the moment, as they try and whittle it down to something that makes sense, eventually you will get this banner at the bottom saying, hey, you know, this can be used as an application. You know, do you want to add it to your home screen? It is an improvement on the original add to home screen from Apple, and then the ways that Chrome on Android went through add to home screen, because it's more discoverable, it's more obvious for users. And so then you get that icon on the home screen, you get that same real estate that any real application uses, and then I guess after a while, profit. That's why the marketing teams want you to build apps, right? Profit. We can get that just with our website, it's fine. But that ability to like work offline, have all those kind of icons and things set up and a short name set up, means that the Chrome certainly at the moment will trust your application to be good enough to live there on the home screen next to native applications. And so that I think is kind of exciting. And so that's service workers in general. And if you're not convinced by all of that right now, and I forgot to plug the audio in earlier, but if you're not convinced by that, and let's hope this works, they are a progressive enhancement. They are something you can add to a site, something you can improve sites in more than 50% of like used browsers right now, so Chrome, Opera, and Firefox. And I think they're cool, but in the future, I think we will wonder how we cope without service workers. And secondly, in the future, we will also wonder how we coped without full-on videos for browser features, because I kind of want to show you this one. Please, audio work.
For too long, users have been left staring at a white screen. For too long, they've been let down by the cruel seas of network connectivity. And for too long, we've been powerless to help. We've been left waiting. But no longer. A new browser feature has arrived. A total game changer. A feature that lets you control the network rather than letting the network control you. Who is this new feature? And what promises does it bring? Introducing the Service Worker.
XML HTTP request, I've had that. That's an amazing thing. That's actually pretty much an advert for the Udacity course on offline web applications, which I advise you take a look at if you're interested in doing this and having a look at any more of it. It is an amazing video, and yes, all new browser features are going to have to come up with better than that in order to win now, I think. But that's me. I'm excited about the application and the service worker. I just want to finish with one tiny little plug, if you don't mind, in that next month, in fact, just about a month away, it's quite amazing, Twilio are holding a conference out in San Francisco called Signal, where we are talking about all sorts of communications and the future of development and communications, as well as security and other such stuff like that. I'd love if you had a look at it. It's at twilio.com/signal. And if you want to come along, please use the code PNASH20 for 20% off tickets. One other thing, this is the first time I've given this talk, and I really would like to know if it has helped at all. And so it'd be awesome if you could send me a message which just answered on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely is it you'd recommend this talk to a friend or colleague? If you could send a text message to that number, that would be really amazing, and that would really help me out. The number's on the next slide as well, so that's me for right now. Thank you very much for listening to me this evening. Yeah, thank you.